into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
Okay, hello, October Spooky Podcast. Welcome. Vincent Price voice, folks.
Welcome.
Vincent Price, Trump, folks. I don't know. We're just
Step
that
inside
Canadian
the
for a second?
podcast.
yeah.
We're literally in someone's head right now. That is creepy. We're in your ears. We're like worms.
Yeah, it's in your head. It's in your head. Podcast.
America.
We've deviated from our spooky theme. I just wanted to show you.
Their
The Troubles are
bombs
not spooky in the same way.
and their guns.
Is that what is zombie about the Troubles?
Right?
Yeah, dude.
With their bombs and their guns. Yeah.
And their guns and their bombs.
Okay. So the black and tans, the Brits are the zombies.
I never really thought
I
about
think
this.
everyone is supposed to be the zombie in this song, and it doesn't take sides, and that's why it's a hit.
Okay.
Interesting. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm Jake Flores. Alex Patak is here.
Welcome to the podcast.
Anders Zombili is here.
Cranberries Lee here.
Hello,
Cranberries
everyone.
Lee.
Cranberries Lee.
It is the month of Halloween. That's the name of the month, baby. I'm an all-monther
Let
when
this
it comes
podcast
to
linger.
Halloween. I watch horror movies every day of October. I'm one of those people, and I'm vibing extra hard with our podcasts now. So there's going to be lots of cool music and just weird gothic-y on accoutrement. Not accoutrement. You can't see the clothes I'm wearing. I meant like accents. I have been reading a lot of HP Lovecraft lately in preparation for what we're going to talk about with our guests today. Our guest, Talia Lavin, wrote a piece interestingly paralleling the nocturnal child sacrifice ritual trope as it pertains to anti-Semitism, to the Satanic Panic of the 90s, to QAnon, all that stuff. And it got me
If
thinking,
you love The Wicker Man, you'll love Talia Lavin's interview in our podcast.
it was making me think about HP Lovecraft, right? Because he wrote a bit, he used the kind of recurring trope of the dark ritual in the night a little bit in his stories. Cthulhu is this thing you have to summon in the night in your, weird wizard tribunal island circle thing. I also read a great story he put out in his later years today called Dreams in the Witch House, which I think is kind of fun because he doesn't realize that Witch House will later go on to be a ridiculous genre of music that mashes up, I think, Swisha House and like goth music. Is
that what that is?
If I remember correctly, I think that's what it was. I think that was the joke. I could be wrong. It was a thing for like a year. Witch House. It was like goth, like rap or some shit. Might be wrong.
What era was this?
This is like fucking 5 or 10 years ago. It's like kind of recent.
Okay.
Wait, is it when you're in the frightening club?
Yeah. Dreams in the Witch House, though, is a story that it embodies a lot of H.P. Lovecraft's tropes and recurring themes, a lot of which are very racist. That it's one thing a lot of people know about H.P. Lovecraft, and that's relevant to kind of where I'm going with this, I guess. It's a story about a college student who's studying mathematics, and he's living in this fictional city of Arkham, where all of HP Lovecraft stuff takes place, and he lives in this house that is said to be, this crazy old lady used to live there. They call her a witch now, and she went crazy, and the room is built all bizarre, herky-jerky, angularly, and he becomes more and more disturbed by the weird angular lines and like designs on the walls and stuff. And he starts to have these fever dreams where he's transported into like this ostensibly fourth dimension place where like he sort of says that he stops perceiving his own body and the shapes and beings around him in like the three dimensions, and it's this hard to fathom, continuous MC Escher painting type thing. And it's a great story. You should read it. All of H.P. Lovecraft's stuff is available online for free. He's dead.
Guys, support H.P. Lovecraft. He's doing great work.
He's got a Patreon.
He's
in Arkham DSA.
Somebody had to have started that by now.
I'm not to exist already.
But
this isn't news, but that's the name of the asylum from Gotham. Batman.
Yeah.
Right.
Arkham DSA.
And the DSA is trying to get all the prisoners out of there.
Yeah. The Killer Croc should be allowed to vote. He's a product of society. Killer Croc.
Do not do tropes to the Scarecrow.
So the story kind of revolves around this character as he's studying these really insane mathematics that are he's digging deep into the back of the Necronomicon and getting into the part where it gets into geography, and he's using ancient, sacred, scary fourth dimensional mathematics to access this otherworldly realm where this witch lives who's trying to pull him into it and like ruin his mind and stuff. It's really cool. H.P. Lovecraft's actually, a great fucking horror writer. This stuff is fun and unnerving and shit, but he's also hella racist, right? So like in the story, the room is rented to him by, for no reason, H.P. Lovecraft informs us, a Polish landlord, and all of his neighbors just have these ethnic names and stuff. And there's like a figure who is like black, like the color, he's just like a shadow person. But
I'm not laughing at that part. I was laughing at Polish, not laughing at this.
The black man in the story that's supposed to be from an otherworldly dimension, he goes out of his way to tell you, he uses all sorts of old-timey race science words to explain he's not this kind of black. He's actually like a space black. It's fucking crazy, right?
Allow me to be clear.
He's like a fly, not a man.
Yeah,
right.
a fly.
Well, you're walking into the part that's a problem then.
Yeah.
So why am I talking about H.P. Lovecraft on our Socialist podcast? Well, because I think, you could make an argument that the xenophobia of H.P. Lovecraft's work and the horror are one and the same, and they come from the same root, and sort of what he's describing is his fear of other people and other worlds and things like that. And that's
elder gods moving into your neighborhood, dating your daughter.
If H.P. Lovecraft was on that Nextdoor app, it would be buck wild.
I just want everyone to know the landlord's Polish. Yeah. We're moving on. There's an alert for that.
Yeah. They're summoning tentacles. They come over here with their tentacles. They don't clean up after
themselves. New to the
themselves.
neighborhood. What kind of black is the mailman?
H.P. Lovecraft also, he's one of those writers who only became kind of famous after his death. He ghost wrote for Houdini once, and other than that, he was just a pulp writer. And he was sort of resurrected after his death. So he died very poor. And he died in 1936, 37, something like that. And what, interestingly, was a socialist at the end of his life. He was, and I don't know how much you could really read into that, because he was really into Roosevelt, FDR. And wrote a little bit about capitalism's monstrosities in an HP Lovecraftian way, but was also still hella racist, which people argue about and say, well, he couldn't have been racist if he was a socialist, but I don't know if you've been around the internet lately. It's totally possible.
I thought he made like a big apology.
Yeah,
for being
that's what I heard
racist,
too. He repented, like a deathbed, like born again Christian situation.
Oh,
that never happens.
Yeah. That is pretty funny. I mean, I guess, maybe he did, in fact, sort of look back on the whole thing. I don't know that he was necessarily a big capitalist to begin with, though. I guess what I'm getting at is I think he's a little bit mythologized by people on all sorts of the political spectrum. I read a Reason.com
and then on the other hand,
article about him.
When you write books your whole life and die poor, you're like, actually, this doesn't work. Destroy it now. It's a Cthulhu monster or whatever.
Those last 4 minutes of his life, he was really fucking enlightened, okay? The novels in his head were some of the best anti-racist literature that humankind
He
could
said
muster.
several anti-slurs, replacing all of the slurs he said before for 80 years.
Yeah, he renamed his cat into Human Man.
I forgot about the cat. That's funny.
The cat is the funniest thing about him. It's so fucked up. Yeah, I know. And what's interesting is, if he had maybe like had a death scare and then not died, we could have had a second phase of HP Lovecraft where he wrote, specifically in his style, but it was all woked up and shit, and about how capitalism is the horrible tentacle monster and stuff, and you confront your own weird xenophobic fears by climbing into the black abyss and then discovering that it's your own head or some shit. Could have happened, but it's not happening. Instead, we just... He
wrote the hit show Lovecraft Country, which takes place after he's dead.
Actually, he didn't write that. So that was somebody else writing about him and in his...
No, I'm saying the new woke Lovecraft could write it, though. It's a missed opportunity.
Oh, I see. Yeah. That show is
like
funny
the real...
as shit because one of the characters played Johnny Cochran on the O.J. Simpson show, and he's just... There's a part where he's in like a wizard tribunal, and it's a serious, horror thing where he's like fighting with this wizard tribunal. But if you've seen him play Johnny Cochran, it's impossible not to imagine him as Johnny Cochran, yelling at the wizards about, if the hat fits, you must acquit and all this shit. I don't know.
It would be funny if, the real fucking Lovecraft, if he was just a Roosevelt supporter because he was like super, super enthusiastic about his Japanese American policy and like nothing else. That's what got him into social democracy.
Yeah.
Look, whoever gives me the camps, just give me that guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's points for we have to get more racist to make socialism happen, people,
Right.
That's how we
HP
got
Lovecraft,
right.
And he's doing the make Biden say slurs posting.
Yeah, man, it would be so great if he wrote a story about Biden, because he writes stories about people going insane, and it's real fun to read because it's kind of just like, they singularly follow these characters as they descend into madness. So he could write about Biden's schizophrenia or his paint madness, or like a tale of the paint, the lead well or something like that, like all the paint is coming out of a scary well. Or he could write a story like the one I was describing. A lot of his stories are about people as they research things and they sort of go down this mad scientist tack and they learn forbidden knowledge that makes you go insane because it's from ancient Cthulhu times, right? We could do a story about Trump kind of researching Regeneron as he uses it on his own body and stuff, and then going insane and becoming a Regeneron infested person. That'd be fucking cool,
Mm-hmm.
Although the research did make him younger, it came at a terrible cost.
Yeah, it'd be cool. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, is Trump younger now? He has been admitting to it on
apparently
camera a lot.
Regeneronated.
Apparently he's a senior, though. I don't know if you guys knew that, but he's over 65 years. He admitted to that on camera.
Well, he was attending a seniors meeting or something. It was I don't know if you know this. I'm one of you. I'm a senior.
Well, it was one of his green screen videos that the background is the White House lawn. but it's clearly like just
it's just hard. It's hard to hate on someone feeling so them, in the moment. He's on top of the game right now.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that the steroids just like bring him over the edge,
Yeah.
And
I'm not gonna lie, I am Regeneron curious right now. I want what he's having.
He's offered to have the military fly it to everyone with COVID in Regeneron helicopters. So that's a real option on the table.
I can't wait till
he's fully transitioned into high hopes for a live-in Trump.
Yeah.
He has
I know.
that energy.
He's so positive now. He's like he's got like posy vibes or something. He's like a weird, bright and shiny person. He used to be like angry and stuff, but this weird, like
no one wants that. That's why he was losing.
Near-death experience recovery Trump is very funny because he's got like a new lease on life, and it's all about how good he feels. He's still killing us.
Right. It's the Scrooge poking his head out the window. You boy, what day is it? No one cuts a new bill until after the election.
Oh
yeah. I don't know if it's going to. It's not looking good for him poll wise, but the question is, are there going to be enough people who just don't give a shit about it? Because like, I'm seeing stuff that's very strange in Minnesota, where I'm from, where the Iron Range, which is like a solid blue region, it has been for a very long time, is like leaning Republican now because there's like iron workers who, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's Trump's policies or just whatever the economy has been doing in the iron industry has really benefited them, and their wages have gone up over the past 4 years, and now they're going to vote for Trump. And that could swing Minnesota, which would totally remake the electoral map. So that kind of shit has me worried, like I feel like the support he's going to get outside of his diehards is going to be from shit like that. People who are willing to look past all that stuff because for some fucked up, like if like a very temporary way, they're benefiting economically.
Well, he also, what we could see is a rise of like a Cthulhu-like cult around Trump all over the country because he did like kind of die and then come back from the dead. So he has effectively turned himself into, like a cult figure, like a martyred, like a Christ figure, but also a Frankenstein of sorts. Also
Frankenstein is the Christ of monsters in a way.
Yeah.
Dude, you know how there's a way you can like legally die or you'll like be dead for a second medically and then your heart will, kick back in?
Of course.
Yeah.
The Frankenstein method.
Yeah, I wonder if Trump's going to want that to be done to him intentionally, just to say he was literally came back from the dead.
I mean, I honestly, I think that if someone put the myth out there that did happen while he was in the hospital, that's all it takes for like the myth to take hold and then this, phenomenon to occur. But to be sure, if anyone put the idea in his head,
I heard that happened.
To be sure, he could go to the hospital and be like, all right, do it to me. Like, shock me until I'm dead because I want to be like Trump 2, reborn or whatever.
Doc, I just saw the movie Choke. You got to choke me. I want to choke.
Yeah.
I mean, best case scenario, I think it's safe to say among friends here that best case scenario is he croaks within the next day. That would be great.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
I don't know if it's going to happen, but like Pence,
it's only going to allow him to come back more powerful.
True. Yeah. But I mean, I wonder though, like what would happen with his base and with the Republican Party. Cause like Pence just isn't going to, maybe he'd win. I don't know.
No way.
Yeah. I think he would probably lose. And if he did win, he's not going to stick around and inflame people in the same way that Trump does.
I mean, he would still give all of the levers of power of the executive branch over to the Republican death cult, which is, the main problem of the Trump presidency. It's easy to forget because he's such a psycho. But no, I feel 100% confident if he died, the Trump fans, the only Trump fans would not show up for anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Too busy waiting to show hole to their big orange guy.
Trump only fans. Disgusting.
Anders, you had a hot scoop, I believe, that we wanted to get to.
Oh yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. So we're a couple days out after the thwarted kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer, the governess of Michigan. Is that sexist for me to call her governor of Mich?
Is it?
I'm declaring.
I wouldn't
it
have
as
thought
sexist
so,
now.
except
I'm
you said it.
self-correcting. I'm
Okay.
just improving in front of your eyes. So.
I think it's like Madam.
He's like a machine.
You say like Madam Governor or some shit like that.
You're just
Miss
supposed to say
Lady
the
Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
Lady Governor, Governette. I mean, it's pretty obvious that this was like it's obviously bad that these men want to do these things and think these fucked up ideas. But like it appears, as is the case with most of these FBI things, that the informant was really pushing the kidnapping thing. You know, in a way that it not necessarily clear that they would have been inspired to do it were it not for this informant.
Wait, was there an agent?
It's experimental.
Was there an agent provocateur situation?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
It's experimental because it's the first time it's been tried outside of a mosque.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Right, because they've been doing this stuff to the left for a really long time, and like, is it the case that maybe we're better off with these guys behind bars? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to say that if you're a prison abolitionist. So, like, obviously, I'm not shedding any tears for these guys, but like, I think there's a danger in letting this distract from all the awful shit the FBI is doing. Like, I have this conversation with a relative recently about like, well, you don't know all the good stuff the FBI and the CIA does, you know, because we don't
That's
know.
true.
They're probably saving our lives all of the time.
I
They
couldn't
can't
name one
tell
good
us.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you think that was actually true, if they're actually doing that constantly, you don't think you would hear about that even a little bit?
They would tell
you don't think they would?
so
Yeah.
much because they do declassify stuff. And like,
Right.
here's the thing. I know exactly how much good the FBI does. They fought the KKK once or twice during like Carter's administration, and it's in all the books, you know, because they're like, look, wow, you know, we did a thing
Right.
that you guys like.
Well,
Fan service.
it is interesting though, because I think I mentioned this on the show before, but like when the radical right really got going, like, I mean, of course, the 70s, 60s civil rights movement, they were really nasty. But when what I think you would call the militia movement that we're seeing in Michigan, the really strong roots of that, I think, are also in the 80s, actually, when we had Reagan, who, of course, is maybe the furthest right president we've ever had, but he was a globalizer. He believed in open borders, basically. He believed in free immigration for the cheap labor aspect. He didn't actually care about people. And he was, you know, the EU was being created, and there were all these international organizations, the beginning of GATT, WTO.
And he was a zombie, which is spooky because it's October.
Yeah.
There you go. But what people don't realize is that nativist far-right groups were like really in full swing under Reagan. Like there was that's when that shit really started. And so there were a lot of clashes in the 80s and up till, you know, H.W. Bush, Ruby Ridge. Like this shit was going down. And then it really hiked up under Clinton. And that's when you have the birth of the organization that are these chuckleheads are a part of here, the Michigan militia.
Don't pull any punches, Anders. You can say it. Chuckleheads.
Bunch of goofballs they are trying to kidnap the governor.
Madam Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
Silly duck. Silly goose.
But the Michigan militia, so this is the group that these guys were a part of, also home to Timothy McVeigh for a period of time, Terry Nichols as well, and the guy Norm Olson, who was the head of the group right after the Oklahoma City bombing, insisted that it was the Japanese that did this.
Well, do we know it wasn't?
Well, it was right after the Shinrikyo gas attacks, which is his reasoning that there was, and they did hate America for justified reasons, Shinrikyo. But
specifically Oklahoma, the state in the center of America. They
get them in their heart, the heart of America.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that it was Timmy McVeigh. He's admitted to it.
Timmy McVeigh.
Yeah.
Anders just called him. I just want to point out to everyone.
But what they don't mention, though, is, and this is another, so like, these examples are brought up, right? The FBI, hey, they went after Timothy McVeigh. They went after these far-right militias. They've done it. They've gone after the KKK. But after Oklahoma City, and this is also a couple years after Waco, so you have to take that into consideration. But right after Oklahoma City, there's some pretty strong evidence of links between Timothy McVeigh and Elohim City, which is this like compound in Oklahoma. It's like out in the middle of nowhere, like this old school traditional society. I think Jake has done stand up there a few times.
Oh yeah,
it's like a nationalist, far right, white supremacist like family. Basically, it's this like cult Amish, Nazi Amish organization. And the hit
Great
that
crowd.
went out on
didn't like the filthy stuff, but good crowd.
But the hit, I think, for Oklahoma City came from there, and the FBI declined to investigate. They were like, we got our guy. And anyone who thinks it was just Timothy McVeigh is just kind of a kooky butt. So they really don't care about going after the right in the same way that they would had this been, the new Black Panther Party or something like that.
Right. They like to stitch it up with one guy and leave the whole other thing hanging out there. That's interesting. I have a question. I haven't really read much about this, like the people that tried to kidnap Madam Lady Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Are they Boogaloos? Because I know the Boogaloo movement has also roots in the same like muck as Timothy McVeigh and all that early 90s stuff.
I don't know if they're Boogaloo from their from pictures I've seen of them. They don't appear to be. I don't think they're wearing Hawaiian shirts and stuff. I think they come straight out of like the Michigan militia tradition.
Okay, interesting.
Which is more camouflage type. But then again, I don't really know. Maybe
all that stuff's like kind of intertwined and mixed up. It's like inner scene stuff that like they might as well all be the same people. It's like how like if somebody asked us like, oh, we need alt comedy versus clubs or something, we'd have some big explanation, but it doesn't fucking matter really.
Right. Yeah, I do Boogaloo rooms. I do trad milish rooms. It's all good.
I do I do McVeigh runs here and there, straight up the middle of the country.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm seeing now apparently there were some ties to the Boogaloo movement.
I had a feeling. But it's a vague.
It's also October and it's the Boogaloo movement.
It's the Boogaloo movement.
It's the
that would be a great costume that I wouldn't do, but someone should. Is that you're a Boogaloo boy?
Oh, you think a good Halloween costume would be to be a racist white nationalist ghost? Well, let me. I don't mean to burst your bubble, buddy, but it's been done a few times in this country. Talking about the Ku Klux
and
Klan.
He's the president. I forget what.
Oh, I see. With the
No, I was talking about.
Well,
the
he
Klan.
meant the KKK.
They look like ghosts.
They do.
It's hilarious. They're so evil, but they look like a little goddamn boo bucket from McDonald's.
They look like what you would imagine a ghost is. And I think we were one of the first ones to tap into this.
Yeah, no one's ever thought about it. That's a fact about the Klan that is, it's so like on its face, you don't think about it very often, but it is weird. They dress like that because they're trying to invoke the image of ghosts. That's silly. Alternate timeline, they all dress like mummies or Frankensteins or something, or a different person from the Monster Mash,
Yeah. I thought it was just because of the white, and they're trying to.
I read a post on this recently that the first iteration of the Klan had like disguises essentially, so you could go out and there were just like organic grassroots white power communities that banded together to keep minorities down. And then the second iteration of them actually made a uniform, and that's where you get the spooky ghost one, because they're the actual like white sheet look is very similar to like a medieval like a Christian kind of thing.
A white
or
knight.
a medieval Catholic uniform, but they pursued Catholics, so it doesn't really make any sense. But yeah, it's just because they're fucking addicted to hierarchy that everyone eventually was like, look, you got to wear a spooky ghost thing.
Yeah.
We went with spooky ghost.
What's funny to me is that there's a every once in a while, so if you're fighting the Ku Klux Klan in a video game, the white ones are the peons, and then there's like a purple ghost that comes out, and he's like the mini boss, and there's
He's the dragon.
It's like Pac-Man.
Yeah, there's like a green one sometimes. What does that mean? Oh, I'm like a water
I like
clan
that
guy.
for the first version of it. The first version of it had like, okay, some of us are ghosts, and then I'm a Dracula, and we're burning a cross on your lawn.
Yeah.
I just don't get like how anyone would be like would find that admirable in any way, like that you would be excited or proud to see a Klansman. Like at best, they look funny, you know.
Yeah.
At worst, they're terrifying. But nowhere in there is there like, yeah, that's my fucking team. You know,
we could definitely do a whole episode on this. I think a lot of it is like Confederate resentment. And I say that not knowing anything about it and thinking that they're ghosts.
Spooky ghosts. Yeah, we should do a Klan episode. They're hilarious and stupid and weird.
Let's do a Klan episode.
All right, upcoming Klan episode. Hey, listen, if you're a musician and you want your music played on the Klan episode, email me.
Well, we could watch, because I tried watching Birth of a Nation, and that shit is so fucking long.
Boo, boring.
Right.
Yeah.
Pacing was different back then.
But apparently there's another
Not enough
one.
Sex. Birth of a Nation. How did the birth happen? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How did it happen?
It was artificial insemination, I guess.
Artificial insemination of a nation.
But apparently there is a better one and a shorter one that was made in the 1920s. Movie, I mean one. It's by a black guy, Oscar Michaud. That was like about being terrorized by the Klan. But
it's the same story?
No, it's not. It's just a movie from that era.
There's a better movie than Birth of a Nation.
A better movie, yes. The Homesteader.
Yeah.
Which is released in 1919. Not a great year for
tough year for black filmmakers, 1919.
Yes.
They've seen better
really
days.
Amazing that he made this thing. That's actually incredible. And he made another one about 1920 about coming home after World War I and getting just, you know.
There's a sequel movie about the racism he faced for putting up that other movie immediately afterwards.
I want to make a prequel to Birth of a Nation that's a porno called, it's like a white supremacist porno, and it's the whitest people I can find, and it's called The Fuck of a Nation, or like...
Fuck of a Nation, you're saying.
Wait, what is it called? When you conception of a nation?
Conception of a nation. Fuck of a nation is better. I'm here to help you punch this up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
if it's a porn, lucky you. You could just use the incredibly racist porn industry we have and pick almost anyone in it, and you're good to go. You have the whole cast.
Yeah. All right. The nation of America, what we are in and we are podcasting about, was born when two spooky ghosts decided to jack each other off and fuck each other. It's a ghost baby. You heard it here first, folks. And
I'm here to watch it. I'm here for the movie.
With an upcoming film that I'm making, as I'll be director, called Fuck of a Nation. GoFundMe link in the
support Jake.
Support my side project. All right. Well, we should probably get into our interview. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are going to speak now with journalist Talia Lavin about her recent piece on the trope of the I can't remember the exact word for it, the dark satanic
Blood libel
ritual in the night, blood libel, as it pertains to anti-Semitism, the satanic panic of the 90s, QAnon, all of the things. There's a motif that white supremacists have been working with for a long time, and various other factional, hateful people. And also, we will talk about her book, Culture Warlords, My Journey into the Dark Web of White Supremacy, and what she learned about Nazis by hanging out with them undercover on the internet. All right, enjoy, everyone.
Let's go to the tape.
hit it.
You love saying that. Talia, thank you for coming on the show. We're all fans of your journalism and writing. Specifically, we read this piece that you put out recently about the sort of satanic child sacrifice trope as it pertains historically to anti-Semitism, to the satanic panic of the 90s, and now to crazy fucking bonkers QAnon people. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on here, why you wrote it, how all those things are related, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll say, like, I've been writing about the fringe right for a while, and some of the most amazing people I've talked to throughout have been medieval historians, because there are a lot of ways in which the white supremacist movement has sort of hijacked a lot of medieval images, and like the coolest people I've talked to are medieval historians who are fucking pissed that this is going on. They're like, fuck this. I did not spend the entirety of my life writing about like ye old chronicle for just like white supremacists to chuds to use it for justification. So
This has all been terrible optics for the Crusades.
If I was the historian that originally discovered the Kekistan frog guy, I'd be furious right now.
Yeah, no. I mean, well, there's a whole documentary about the Pepe Frog cartoonist.
Right.
Like, this is crazy. I made a frog who likes to smoke weed. And so, yeah, like the Middle Ages are basically the frog who likes to smoke weed of like misused by white supremacists.
Totally.
So I read this really great post a couple of years ago by a historian named Michael Barbizot, who wrote about Pizzagate and this trope called the Nocturnal Ritual Fantasy, which was first written about in the context of European witch trials. And it's basically this idea that recurs like throughout Western history, where you have a dominant group accusing an outgroup, a social outgroup, an undesirable group, of this very specific set of depredations. Like the reason why it's like this recurrent and fascinating trope, and why it fascinated me, is because it's specifically the idea that the people that you are intending to persecute engage in rituals by night with demons to abuse children. And so you've seen that play out, like it actually even predates Christianity. So like Romans used it to accuse Christians of this kind of, like early Christians of this kind of evil. Then Christians like took it over really enthusiastically and used it against heretics, and Catholics used it against early Reform, Protestants, and then of course throughout the course of medieval history, this was used against Jews in the form of the Blood Libel, which is the idea that Jews every Passover kidnap murder Christian children and use their blood either to like perform a demonic inversion of the sacrament or to bake it into our matzah, which matzah is just like really flavorless. It's just a cracker. The worst thing matzah has ever done for me is caused me constipation. Yeah, no, like the worst thing matzah has ever done for me is caused like horrible constipation. There's no blood in it. In fact, it's sort of particularly perverse because there's a particular like prohibition in the Torah against eating blood. Like we're not allowed. That's why kosher salt is called kosher salt, because it's the salt that Jews use to salt their meat and draw out all the blood first.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So yeah, it's like particularly. So they're just throwing a little facts at you.
Yeah,
wow.
But I do.
Well, this salt is far saltier than the salts you're used to. It does have like a real the conspiracy in general has a real pagan feel to it. Like we already know there are nature spirits, and we know you're working with them.
I think when you get into the Christian era, it really aligns with Christian theology. I mean, one thing that struck me as I was doing research was just like how many Americans like really fervently believe in the devil. You know, almost as many as say they believe in God. And so like once you get past their like Roman era, the idea of like consorting with demons becomes this powerfully Christian idea. And so the nocturnal ritual fantasy trope recurred not only in the Blood Libel, certainly in the Satanic Panic of the 1980s, and you really see it in QAnon as well. So like all this stuff about like Hillary Clinton like eating like children's flesh and like sucking their blood, and like these orgies, and demons are there, and like Black Lives Matter activists are consorting with demons, and just like the demon stuff is really powerful on the fringe right.
Yeah, it's really interesting that it's sort of echoed all the way back from early like Rome persecuting Christians and then Christians persecuting everyone else. Because I've read a little bit about how the Romans sort of came up with like mythology and stuff like this basically after, you know, their experiences with the fighting with like the Goths, like the Visigoths and stuff back then. And also, I think why a lot of this has this pagan bent where it's just, oh, you know, these wood people, they're, you know, they're up to something or whatever. But it echoes through history, you know, in early American history when you have like we just did a series on John Brown being like a Calvinist in the North, you know, everyone considered him to be this heretic who was out in the woods doing, you know, God knows what, not being civilized like in society or whatever. And
yeah, there was a lot more woods back then too.
Well, it's interesting that the like this demonic dark ritual thing that is, you know, it implies the woods. It still exists and is still cast onto people now. But now, instead of the woods, since, you know, we've expanded the entire continent and there's no like geographical scary place to be part of this mythology, it's kind of just like projected into the internet, you know? It's just
and then another popular physical manifestation of like where this could be taking place is tunnels. Yeah. So like QAnon had really active mythology that there were tunnels under Central Park where 35,000 children were being held for like the chemicals in their blood to be like preyed on and sexually abused by the elite and like have their blood drunk. I sound insane saying this, but I just read about it for research. No, I hear the way it sounds coming out of my mouth, and it sounds weird.
It's such an interesting theory because the tunnels, I mean, if the elite are the one drinking the children's blood, they have the rooms they can go to. They don't need to make new ones under Central Park. You could just do it on Madison Ave somewhere. There's a nice lobby. There's kids inside.
It's just not the same when there's sunlight and it's during the day. Like the sun dilutes the blood. It's not as potent if it's not eaten underground.
I mean, I'll have to take your word for it.
I feel like
assume
a feature of conspiratorial thought needs to have this extra element to it where it's like a puzzle. It's like a thing that, you know, you figured out is happening right in front of you, and you get to upload all the pictures of the ground from above, and you go, look here, you can tell that there's a tunnel there and stuff like that. It's
yeah, you're like part of the tribe with the secret knowledge. And what was interesting to me about so first of all, QAnon is like this very fascist, super like pro-authority movement. It's interesting. It's like A, like the elites are corrupt, but like B, it's like the military and police and Donald Trump that will save you. So it's an interesting like polarity there, but it's very authoritarian. And so the fantasy, specifically the Central Park fantasy, was that like Marines had like taken the 35,000 captive children from the tunnels and spirited them away to the ship, the U.S. Navy ship Comfort, which was in New York Harbor for like the coronavirus crisis. So it was like, Corona's fake. The reason the ship is there is to rescue the mole children. Marines are heroes, and Hillary Clinton sucks children's blood. Like it's a really bizarre minds, and the minds that believe that wholeheartedly fascinate me. They're very capacious, it seems to me. But the idea is, it's like secret knowledge that you have. And it has to be secret. It has to be tunnels. Because like just facing up to the degree of like elite deviance that actually exists, and like they can just steal whatever they want, do whatever the fuck they want, which is true. Like you don't have to invent tunnels under Central Park to be like, elites act with complete impunity in America. You can just like look at tax records and shit.
well, maybe the tunnels offer the angle where you get the police out of it, because if there was a room with security guards and stuff, well, then they would be the bad guys too, and that's not how the story goes.
Yeah, no, and what struck me about the tunnel specifically as a fascinating parallel to the Satanic Panic was that there was also a conspiracy theory about tunnels back in the 80s. So the McMartin preschool trial was like one of the biggest Satanic Panic cases. It was in California. It was like the most egregious miscarriage of justice like ever. But this crazy woman whose son was at the McMartin preschool started basically extracting all these confessions from him, or calling the police all the time and like saying that her son had been sexually abused at the preschool. And then like these psychologists associated with the cops like started using these like really coercive methods on these preschoolers, and basically like the confessions that they extracted from the kids, who all initially denied being abused, became more and more outlandish, and saying like there were goat men, one of them could fly, and there were tunnels beneath the school, and that's where they hurt us. And so there were actually multiple excavations by the parents, by forensic psychology, like a forensic archaeologist they hired.
They got a backhoe out there, right?
They got a backhoe. Gloria Steinem funded one of the tunnel digs, actually. Like, it was like really, like, that's the thing about the Satanic Panic, the daycare abuse panic, that is a little different than QAnon. It was very transpartisan. It was like, prosecutors were going after people to look tough on sex abuse. Feminists were like, finally someone is taking, incest and child abuse seriously. But really it was like such a commonplace. It was like, of course there's a rampant, epidemic of daycare-based child abuse. It's a little like the way people believe in human trafficking. I was going to
say that comes up a lot because, we talk about ICE a lot, and also the anti sort of sex work bills that have been passed in the last couple of years, and how they both use the specter of human trafficking, which is interesting because it's a really useful propaganda tool, because you get both like liberals who think it's a like a feminist thing that's against trafficking women, and then also you get racists basically who always use this image of child trafficking in they're like the 14 words, the white supremacist dog whistle, and also just in in this idea of always swarthy, always brown, scary human trafficking villains that are alluded to in Liam Neeson movies and shit like that. And something that I thought was really funny in your article was that hadn't occurred to me was that you know, if you crunch the numbers on all, like, supposedly how many children are being sacrificed and trafficked in all of the QAnon conspiracy theories, it comes out to like something like 10% of children would have to be missing for this stuff to be real, which would just be absurd.
Yeah, every single, like, millions of kids vanishing, and that's just, like, needless to say, that's not the case. Like, most kids in the U.S. are alive. Like, you know, many more children suffer from, like, hunger than trafficking, but it's like, but like feeding hungry kids is a lot less sexy than the idea that there's like an elite cabal like kidnapping like literally millions of children a year. The two people that I talked to that really gave me some useful perspective on this stuff, one is this unbelievably amazing journalist named Debbie Nathan. She's at Debbie Nathan 2 on Twitter. Fuck the Debbie Nathan 1, by the way. This Debbie Nathan is number 1, in my opinion. She wrote a book called Satan's Silence in the mid-90s, when there were still satanic panic cases like being prosecuted, that was like admirably skeptical of the whole thing and really went against the grain of the moral panic writ large, and like very assiduously delved into sort of the innocence of a variety of different defendants in these moral panic cases. But what she told me is that like moral panics are essentially cyclical. So what we're seeing now is almost a recurrence of this cycle. And like this idea that like your children are in danger. Well, like what do children signify, right? Their hope, their innocence, they're the future. And so it makes sense that you accuse your enemies of the worst possible thing, which is like hurting the innocent, destroying the future. So moral panics. And the other person that I think is really worth listening to on this subject is Michael Hobbs, who's a reporter at the Huffington Post. And he's just done like yeoman's work debunking basically the human trafficking the current human trafficking moral panic, like basically crunching the numbers, talking about how a lot of these quote unquote like sex trafficking rescue organizations are like evangelical and don't actually provide any material support, and like how trafficking laws make it like so that, you know, a runaway, like most of the kids that are at risk who actually go missing or who wind up trafficked are like people like kids in the foster care system, kids who run away from home. And like, you know, trafficking laws cover them performing survival sex acts, like for a place to sleep or something to eat. So like the answers to solving the problems of vulnerable kids in society are just like not that sexy. They're like, like help, like make the foster care system better, like give more resources, help children in any material fashion. But like having an enemy and using the specter of mass child sex rings as sort of a like wedge in the culture war is like much sexier and easier than actually materially helping anyone.
Yeah, maybe
if we like got an anonymous account that was like giving numbers on child malnourishment in America and like ways to fix it, you could get some paranoiacs on the case.
Yeah, we just pick a different letter or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like a lot sexier if you imagine like the mass. Like I think like fundamentally at its heart, like QAnon is an authoritarian mass murder fantasy. Mm-hmm. Like it's really about like wanting this day of executions of like the Democrats and like random rich Jews. Like it is fundamentally the idea that like someday these people that our theory posits are responsible for every ill in the world are going to be rounded up and shot, you know, by the government. And so that's the fantasy at its core. And then it encompasses all kinds of other things.
Well,
it's less about the kids than it is about the murder. Yeah.
Let's psychoanalyze a little bit, because I know that you did some gonzo journalism in terms of the alt-right and you know, took a True Detective sort of style route into darkness to try to understand what's going on with these people, and that's related to your upcoming book. So, you know, what do you think is motivating the particularly conspiratorial-minded alt-right members right now?
Well, I look at QAnon time as a flat circle, first of all. That's my True Detective. That's the only thing I know about True Detective. Sorry.
That was pretty much it.
I basically have the cheekbones of Matthew McConaughey as well. So thank you for making that link.
All right.
No, God, am I bantering? Okay, how's banter? I tend to speak. I tend to speak in paragraphs, so you can cut me off at any time.
No, that's good.
I mean,
we have time to fill.
QAnon and the far right, like the people that so QAnon I explored for that article. The far right, like sort of white supremacist, white power movement, I looked at more for the book, and they're a little bit in different silos. There's definitely overlap, but like for me, actually what draws people into both movements is very similar. It's this idea of like, I feel lost. Where do I fit in the world? Is there some cause I could be part of? I think a lot of us feel this way. It's a pretty universal sentiment. For me, like combating white supremacy is sort of an answer for how I figure out feeling lost and confused and feeling self-doubt. But QAnon is like, you can be part of the movement uncovering the truth of who's hurting kids, and like you are privy to a secret truth and part of a movement. And with the white supremacist white power movement, it's like you are the agent of saving the white race. You are going to be the one to help usher in like the collapse of a degenerate civilization and like the replacement of it with a pure white ethno state that preserves our white future. Like, but the core of like why people get involved in these sorts of things, to me, on a psychological level, it's just feeling alienated, feeling lost. And maybe there's a class element to it in the sense that like, if people were provided with more material support in their daily lives by a government, there would be less of this feeling of sort of catastrophic ennui. But what I observed in my gonzo true detective shit is like, like, for example, there was an excerpt of the book published today where I sort of went undercover on a white supremacist dating site. And like,
I love that those exist, by the way.
So many people. yeah. Whitedate.net for Europa Division. That's their thing. The reason why I actually started catfishing there was because they had so few women. They had like a suggestion that you hand out a flyer to women saying like, you look like one of us. Our survival is as important as the survival of the Siberian tiger.
Oh,
join us on whitedate.net.
Wow.
And you were supposed to give the woman the flyer and then take it back. So I was like, okay, they don't have enough women. Time to become one. But yeah, no. So what I noticed is there's like so many software developers, like so many people. Like it's not. There's this like enduring myth, and I think a myth that for a lot of people is about self-absolution. That like every white power guy is like toothless Cletus in his mom's basement. That these people are sort of driven by unique poverty or ignorance. Like they couldn't be like anyone I know. They couldn't be in my neighborhood. But like the truth is, these core psychological feelings of loss, alienation, desire to be part of something bigger than yourself span all socioeconomic and geographical divides.
What is this crazy sound that's feedback sounds happening?
I don't know. I hear me in it.
We'll fix it in post. It's Alex's cat.
But you literally can't fix it in post, Anders. You never do the post.
Why? Yeah, you don't know what
That's
the
why
hell
I
post
say
is.
we can fix it in post because I don't have to do
podcast.
But it's interesting how, going back to the Middle Ages thing, like a lot of the alt-right people now will say they mythologize the Middle Ages as white people. But from at least how I understand it, or it's been explained to me, back then people didn't really think of themselves as white. Like there were a lot of other, bigotries and fucked up hierarchies, but whiteness as a concept was still kind of being developed at that point. So,
right.
Well, what would you need it for?
Right.
If your world is that small, like how is that helpful to you? If you live on the west part of England and you only ever sometimes see like a French invader, whiteness is not very helpful in anything you're doing.
I might be talking a little out of school here, so feel free to tweet at me if you're listening to this and this is hella wrong, but it is my understanding that whiteness as a concept was kind of constructed in reaction to the Catholicism being this thing that banded together all the early imperialism coming out of like Spain and the Habsburgs and all that shit, and Britain basically wanted to compete and did not have a religion that could sort of unify everyone that was in their coalition, so they just sort of came up with this ethnic identity that now we just have hanging around fucking everything up. Could be wrong. I read that a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Sorry,
Ghost
the train in the background.
There's kids on that train. Sorry.
Yeah, it's going through a tunnel.
No, it's God. Sorry.
What is it doing in that tunnel?
That's my train of thought, guys. Hey,
Whoa.
Sorry. No. Sorry. Yeah, it got lost. My train of thought. No, certainly.
Mine's off the rails. Mine is underwater right now.
Goddamn crazy.
Collapsed a bridge.
Like, certainly anyone talking about, like, the white race in the Middle Ages is, like, being a ridiculously anachronistic human being. Like, the organization of humanity into, like, the races was maybe, like, came about in the 1700s, and really reached its nadir in the 1800s and early 1900s. Like, phrenology, race science. Like, for a great primer on this, I'd recommend checking out the book Superior by Angela Saini, which is a history of race science. It's great.
Cool.
But yeah, what's interesting about white supremacists using the Middle Ages as a locus for sort of the origins of the white race and like the origins of their myth making, whether you're talking about them envisioning themselves as crusaders and using the Templar cross and using the battle cry Deus Vult, God wills it, as was common, like happened in Unite the Right in Charlottesville, and it's a pretty common white supremacist dog whistle to this day. Then you also have a separate silo, somewhat overlapping, of people who use the Vikings as sort of a source myth, use pagan iconography, worship Odin. But in both cases, they're using a pre-racialized Europe as a model for like the origins of the white race. And like I studied the origins, like I studied nationalism in college. I mean, that wasn't my major, but like one of the things I studied was nationalism and the origins of various nationalisms. And each of them start with a founding myth and American nationalism is no different, where you imagine a mythical past, you project your current desire onto it. And white nationalism, this kind of pan global whiteness that like posits that whites need their own separate ethno-states, is really no different in the sense that it sort of has to, in order to properly gin up the troops, conjure up a mythologized past from which the noble impulses of preserving the white race have to spring. So they're using these really anachronistic, really idealized images in the Middle Ages, augmented by sort of many decades of lily white popular culture imaginings of these eras, to underline their desires for violence and world domination. So yeah, it's just like any other form of nationalism. It carries its own myths.
Right.
Yeah, the revisionism is pretty interesting because it's like, obviously the same thing that Trump is kind of doing with 1950s America, and you see so much in just modern racism. There's always this redefining of the past, which is just this bizarre form of, warlockery. It's fake, it's made up. It's you tricked all these goddamn guys on Twitter into changing their avatar to something and then pretending it's about a history that it's not about. It's really bizarre. Yeah,
like, let's use a Roman statue, like, to show the nobility of the West throughout, like, history. And it's goofy. There's a great account called @MedievalPOC that just, like, shows images of people of color in medieval art, which I think is just fantastic. It really like is sort of a subtle fight against this strain, because there were people of color in medieval Europe. Of course there were. Like, you know, there were Black people that existed in the Middle Ages. Like, it's not like there was, you know, a world ever where everyone was white. Like, that's just not how it worked. Like, and, you know, like, you know, a lot of Europe was Muslim at the time. Like, it's like things are not as clean cut as the white supremacist founding myth wants you to believe. And that's,
the
again,
closest you could get, right, is if you went way back, you did have a world at one point where everyone was Black.
Yeah.
And that could be the compromise for you if you want one nationality.
Yeah, and then we like pasty faces went up north and learned to really like salty fish. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. It's like, it's been interesting because for years, even before I started reading the book, even before I started sort of really mouthing off about this movement, just by virtue of like being a Jew and like being a woman who talked a lot, like I wound up being like the target of some of this white power rhetoric. And so they have been gazing at me longer than I've been gazing at them. And like what my impetus was in writing the book was to sort of just say, you want me to shut up and fuck you. Like, well, absolutely.
That's basically it, right? All of this boils down to people who are just too damn horny, right? Get it out of your system, you know?
I mean, I guess. I mean, or just too lost or too angry. Like, people are looking for places to put their rage, I guess.
Yeah.
And those are all things that can be confused for being horny. And I think that's where the problem is.
I have to say, joining the white supremacist movement is like a spectacularly bad way to get laid. Like all of these places that I like, I mean, like, look at this white supremacist dating site. They had to like beg women to join. Like all these places, like all these chat rooms that I was like eavesdropping in were just all dudes, like ragging on each other. Like it's just not, if you're looking to get laid, this is not the way. Young men.
Are you saying there's more men than even DSA?
Yeah, like actually. I mean, there are white supremacist women, and I would never like, I think one thing that gets sort of often written, I read a great book for research called what's it called? As The Women of Massive Resistance, I think it's called. It's like about like women have always been a driving force in white supremacist movements and white supremacist policy. And you see that with like Amy Coney Barrett, for example, Phyllis Schlafly. Like there are always women who will choose the protections of whiteness over any advancement of their own gender or equality writ large. And there are certainly white supremacist women and women's groups, trad wives, you know, women who really do their best to further the cause of white supremacy. Unfortunately, they are slightly less dumb than their male counterparts. And my efforts to sort of infiltrate those spaces were a lot less successful.
Really?
Which is why they don't feature that much in the book. They're just like, can anyone vouch for you? Like, why was your profile created like 2 months ago? And I'm like, fuck.
And the guys are like, I can't believe you're here.
Yeah.
Kissing your feet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had a lot of the book was just like creating these characters that had like fully fleshed out backstories, and sometimes I was playing like 5 or 6 different people at once, and like in all these like different chat rooms, and sorting it out and like maintaining some level of sanity like was difficult. So that was interesting. I just found I made a lot more. But there's a great book called Sisters in Hate by Sayward Darby that gets around this problem by doing sort of case studies of 3 prominent women in the white supremacist movement.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, I recommend that. I don't know why I'm just like, it's like book recommendation power hour. You should read my book, and then I'll...
Yeah.
No, we're starting a Wikipedia with a book list.
Read Talia's book.
As of the last few episodes.
First.
Books that we pretend to have read because they were mentioned on air.
Well, I learned a lot today. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on this white supremacist dating app, and I'm going to I'm going to go on as Q, I think is the way to spin this, because everyone will want to hook up with Q, you know, and I'll do drops.
But like you have to be Lady Q. You're just like, I'm Q, but surprise, Q's been a woman all along.
Is Q a guy in the mythology?
I think it's like unclear. I mean, Q is anonymous, right? Q, that's the anon art. Yeah. But what if Q was a lady? I'm sure there's an erotic novel on Amazon that like already has this premise. One thing that I did uncover for the piece, I mean, it's not really like, it just took a couple clicks, but what was fascinating to me is how there's a train again. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool.
It's okay.
It's spooky. We're getting a goth theme going here, especially during October.
Yeah, so I'm calling from the British countryside, and
oh, you're in Britain.
For the listener, Talia is in the woods, and we don't know why. You know, it could be for any number of reasons.
I'm actually I'm hoboing around the country in various baggage wagons, and that's how I'm doing a book tour, is just throwing books out of the backs of trains.
I love it.
But what we know about Talia is she's calling from the woods, and there's definitely a tunnel nearby that a train is going into.
Ghost train.
These are the only two things we can say for sure.
And thousands of captive children are in this tunnel.
Yeah. Are you going up to...
Sometimes it sounds like the devil is in the audio train.
Are you going to be going up to St. Andrews?
Yeah, no, I'm going to get a Wigan kebab in Yorkshire. Yeah, I mean, the point is, devils aren't coming for your kids. Devils aren't the culprit here. It's just like basic human instincts like lack and rage and loss and confusion. And like, what I encourage readers of the book to do, the like sort of message I want people to take away is like, the people in the white power movement are not monsters. They're not unique. They're not uniquely impoverished or ignorant. They are people. And it's incumbent on you to accordingly, as an ordinary person, fight back in whatever way you can and be an anti-fascist. I'm an anti-fascist. I think everyone should be. You know, don't let... Yeah.
I think that something we can kind of glean from this is that on some level, all of this conspiracy about Satanism and child sacrifices and, this cult and, this QAnon stuff is like, sorry to be too on brand here, it's a scary story. And a fun way for you to engage in anti-fascism is to, like... your job here is to go around and tell people like this is not real. It's a fun way you can sort of change, by battling this narrative a little bit. I mean, the story as old as time is, the fucking house on the end of the street isn't haunted. It's just, Boo Radley's a nice old man,
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what was really striking to me was like how just durable this idea of the nocturnal ritual fantasy is and how long it's stuck around and how we always want to think like, oh, in 2020 we're so advanced and we're doing great, but these ancient narratives still have power over us, and these narratives become dangerous when what you have basically in QAnon, like, sure, it's a shiny object and like it's fascinating and weird, and I think that's one motive for a lot of journalism about it. For me, what struck me about like wanting to write about it is that once you have posited that your political enemies are consorting with demons to drink the blood of children, and like you are actively fantasizing about their public execution, like all it takes is, a word to activate that kind of sentiment, and we've seen that we have a presidency that's pretty good at stoking people into violence. So, you have just like a banked ember ready to blaze into an inferno. And so I think it's important to just understand where it's coming from and the sort of human psychological motivations behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so we should probably promote your book and then wind on down here. Where can our listeners read your stuff, get your book, all that sort of stuff?
So I'm on Twitter. You can just search my name, Talia Lavin. My handle is really annoying. It's at chick_in_Kiev. I lived in Kiev for a year. That's what I made Twitter. And it's a stupid pun on chicken Kiev, which is like
Oh.
I think that's pretty good.
it's a chicken breast wrapped with butter, which is kind of, if I had to be a food, it would be that. So you could, that's where I usually
Filled
post on my
with the
link.
blood of children, though.
But no, filled with butter and herbs.
That's my blood. Unhealthy.
God, I'm just gonna shut that down. I am technically full of blood, actually, but it's mine. It's only mine.
I would hope so.
Yeah. So, and the book is called Culture Warlords. You can get it on Amazon, at your local bookstore. If you are lacking in funds, you can call up your local library and ask them to stock it. And I would be very gratified and it comes out next week, Tuesday, October 13th. October 13th. I don't know when this comes out, but October 13th is the date.
I believe that's on Tuesday.
Yeah, this will come out before that.
Yeah, that's Tuesday. So thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you for letting me speak in paragraphs.
Absolutely.
In a spooky train-haunted swath of the countryside. So take care.
Yeah,
thanks for coming on.
I look forward to reading the
Bye,
paragraphs.
Guys.
All right.
Yeah, there's dozens of paragraphs in my book. Okay. Bye, guys.
All right, have a good one. All right, that was our interview with Talia Lavin. Let's wrap it up, guys. What do we have to plug?
Wrap it up. Hey, thanks for listening to our spooky show. I just released my third and most powerful podcast, the radio show Theater of Delights. Do you wish you could escape into another realm of wonder? Slam that subscribe button, dear listener. And I'm on Twitter at Patak Jokes.
All right. Anders, what you got?
At Anders Lee here on Twitter, Dursley on Instagram. Check out Redacted tonight. You can watch clips of it on YouTube and full eps on portable.tv.
All right. I'm at Feral Jokes on everything. My other show is called Why You Mad. You should listen to it. It's really fun. It's me and my friend Luisa Diaz talk about art history, stand-up comedy, political theory, socialist shit, Latino shit, all sorts of shit. Other than that, if you are a listener and you would like us to play your music on the show, I'm going to start doing this again, especially since it's Halloween and it's still Latin Heritage Month. It ends on the 15th. It's a month.
That's right. It's still Latin Heritage Month.
I don't know why that has anything to do with this. Fucking send us, specifically if you play post-punk, gothy shit, punk, metal, whatever. But really, honestly, whatever. Just send us shit. I like to play your stuff on the show. Sure, play us some alt country. Play us some psychobilly Mojo Nixon shit. Did you know that Mojo Nixon is in the Super Mario Brothers movie? I learned that the other day. He plays Toad. Fucking crazy.
What?
Yeah. So send it to poddameamerica@gmail.com. That's the best way to ensure that I see it, because my DMs are a nightmare. All right.
Feeling a bit like Austin Powers because I'm missing my mojo, baby.
I'm missing my Mojo Nixon. I got my Mojo Nixon back.
Nice.
All right.
But that's it, though.
Out like Stanchera.
Out like Stan Cherry.
Out like Stanchera.
Hey everyone, it's the end of the show. If you enjoyed the interstitial buff or music, it was by my friend Jake Hart. It is tentatively titled Go Away. He can be found on Instagram at JakeHartEatsBrains, and that's about it. And our outro music will be by Dead Oil. This track is called Drip.